Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast. Today is Friday, January the 3rd. I'm Zach Ewing with Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan. A Happy New Year to everybody. And, of course, all of our thoughts, positive vibes, prayers, all of that out to the victims and those affected by the tragedy in the French Quarter on early New Year's morning, guys.
Yeah, that was a terrible way to wake up. I'm sure all of us kind of got the news the exact same way. It just I don't think there's any. I think Cam Jordan actually said it best yesterday when he said there were no words for it other than tragedy.
Right.
Yeah, it's you'd like to think these things would never happen, and then they happen right in your backyard, and reality kind of hits home. So, of course, that's where all of our thoughts are, and really the priority for getting the city back on track. But of course, the Saints have been a big part of that in the past, Jeff. And you wrote at the Sugar Bowl yesterday, like sometimes entertainment can be part of that.
Yeah, I think events like that, some of the Saints players, I thought Darren Rizzi, the coach, said it best. I mean, like, puts life in perspective. I mean, Katrina did that for us as well. We all get caught up kind of myopically focusing on a football team or the sports team that we cover or follow as fans, and then something like this happens and you realize where the priorities should be in life. And I think that early, wake-up call that a lot of us got on New Year's Day was pretty sobering. I mean, the irony is people come to this city to celebrate and have a good time, and that's in part why I think it was targeted for that exact reason. So it's the incongruity of that, I think, resonates with so many people all over the world because they've been on that street. I mean, that's one of the most famous streets in the world. So I think it resonated with so many people. I think the city's going to take a little while to recover from it.
Yeah, and something that has kind of stood out to me, though, is, people have talked about the resiliency, and I thought even yesterday seeing it, you could speak better about it, but just seeing all those people go back to the Superdome and crowd in the area, and it was good to see a public response like that, just because as scary as it is, you still got to move forward, and it was good that people didn't let the events kind of, ruin the mood that much.
Yeah, and of course, a thank you to all the first responders and police officers as well, because I going to the Sugar Bowl yesterday never felt unsafe. There was an increased police presence, but it wasn't obtrusive. I think they were there. They were making things safe and just doing their job. So our thanks to them as well. So, look, it's a Saints podcast. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about the Saints. They played their final game on Sunday. But, first, do want to let you know that our friends at Bank Plus sponsor the Saints Insider. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to Bank Anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Take a quick break, and we'll be back to talk about this one. And really, I think more so than the game, the aftermath for the Saints franchise and what may happen early next week. So we'll be back right after this.
Nice bike.
Thanks. Can I get it back before Saturday?
That might be tough.
Whoa. Is it just you?
For now, let's take a look.
Can you reach that? How about?
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
Assistant producer.
Okay, welcome back to the Saints Insider. Saints play the Bucs at noon on Sunday at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. The stakes here pretty obvious, guys. For Tampa, everything's on the line. For the Saints, nothing is on the line. Tampa wins the game. They are the NFC South champion. If they don't, they would need a Carolina upset of Atlanta to win their fourth straight NFC South crown. So having said that, the betting line's out to 14 points. I think that's a little – we'll talk about our predictions later. that's a little inflated by this like must-win incentive for Tampa Bay. But it's the second time in 3 weeks the Saints have been 2 touchdown underdogs after not having that happen for what was it, 22 years? We said.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. It had been a long time, but I mean, like, it's hard to argue with it. I don't know, like, I don't know if any of us were.
They
we'll
lost
get to
by
that.
2 touchdowns to the Raiders.
That is true. They were down by 2 touchdowns to the Packers at the end of the first quarter and never threatened the spread after that. So
Yeah, I mean, like, they're in a really, really bad spot right now. They're playing the last game, a meaningless game for the organization. I mean, it is meaningless in so many ways. They could win the game and stay in number 10 draft position. They could lose the game and stay in number 10 draft position. There's almost literally zero stakes for this game.
Their gamer's already done. I was impressed.
Yeah, thanks.
just plug in some stats, man. Yeah, we can talk quickly about the draft position. I think the Saints are locked into 8, 9, or 10. Luke, is
That's
that
correct.
right?
Yeah.
They could potentially. They would need a lose to move up, and then a win by either the Raiders or the Bears would move them up. If both lose, they move up 2 spots. If just one loses, they move up 1 spot.
Yeah, and it's all like they could finish theoretically if all the teams who are currently 4 and 12 all win, right? I think there's 5
5 or
of them?
6.
There's
Yeah.
5. So if they all win, none of them are playing each other. So like you can't have one cancel each other out. If they all win, the Saints could, in theory, tie for the 5th worst record in football. But the highest they could go in the draft is number 8. So it's all dependent on strength of schedule, and the Saints' strength of schedule will be north of 500 this year. So like the only teams they could pass, the only teams with a better strength of schedule are the Bears and the Raiders. And if those 2 teams win and the Saints lose, the Saints have the number 8 pick. If one of those teams win and the Saints lose, the Saints have the number 9 pick. If both of those teams lose and the Saints lose, the Saints are locked in at the number 10 pick.
If both lose, the Saints, doesn't matter what they do. They'll
Correct.
they'll be
Yeah,
number
Saints
10.
could win or lose. It doesn't matter.
And just to clarify for the listener, the weaker strength of schedule is the
Weaker
higher.
strength of schedule goes higher in the draft.
Bizarre.
If there's
Yeah.
a tie in the record, yes.
It's kind of bizarre. It's opposite of how you do it, for
Like
regular
playoff
seeding.
seeding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
playoff
yeah.
seeding. Do you all get the impression that the Saints are energized by the idea of playing spoiler?
No.
No, especially not after I clumsily tried to ask Cam about that, or like, hey, helping the Falcons, but it was like right after he talked about his donation, and he pivoted back to serious pretty fast. So great
Yeah.
job by me.
Yeah, well, kind of like Dunk was saying. I think a lot of things have been put in perspective, and they don't really. I don't think that's really a factor in their thinking at all this week.
Probably much more fair to say they're motivated by playing for their city, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, again, only matters so much when you get out on the field and the talent disparity is there. And so, I don't know. I guess the one thing that is at stake, guys, maybe is Darren Rizzi would like to end the season with one more win on his interim coach resume. So let's launch into that discussion of what may happen after the game. And this is going to be our transactions segment. It's proudly sponsored by Associated Grocers. Join our team and help support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. How does this go? Darren Rizzi will coach the game on Sunday. I guess he's the interim coach until he's not. He's going to be interviewed, we think. How does that all work as far as who's kind of in control? Rizzi's going to do, an exit press conference on Monday with the media, and then at that point, the coaching position is open.
Yeah, I mean, like I think he'll still probably handle like the exit interviews with the players as well. That's something they do every year. But yeah, I mean, like, their coaching search begins immediately. They are able to actually start the process fully. Like they've been able, I'm sure, review candidates. It's one of the good things about letting go a head coach mid-season is you're able to start to really kind of compile your dossiers on potential head coaching candidates. I'm sure they're gonna in the next coming days schedule a meeting with Mike Vrabel, who is now eligible to do interviews for head coaching jobs, and I'm sure Darren Rizzi will be interviewed for the Saints job. Even if he loses on Sunday, that would put him at what?
3-5.
3-5. I think that he's still merited based on what he's done in his time here, based on what he did as the interim head coach in a really tough situation. I think he still merits consideration for the job, but like they'll be talking to a lot of people for this one for sure, and that starts like Monday.
It does, and part of the rules, if say they're interested in Aaron Glenn, that depends on if the Lions lose to the Vikings and they're the wild card team, I believe they can schedule an interview with Glenn like in between the wild card game and the divisional round if the Lions advance. But it can't be more than 3 hours. It has to be virtual. Like there are rules in place that the league has tried to enforce just so it slows down the hiring process. They want more candidates to get longer looks. And so they've put these rules in place. If the Lions keep advancing, then I think once you're past the divisional round, you have to wait until they're eliminated. And then after that, you have to wait 3 days after the elimination to interview, I think. Is that right?
I haven't like candidates from Super Bowl teams.
There's that week in there.
In the week in between.
This was something I think Sean Payton pushed through back when he was on the competition committee here, because back then Saints, all their coaches were getting in the 18, 17 era. They were getting, distracted by having to do interviews while trying to prepare for playoff games. So I get it. Like, if you're the Lions, you're Dan Campbell, you don't want both of his coordinators are going to be head coaching candidates, and yet they're trying to win the first Super Bowl in franchise history. So how do you balance that if you're Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn?
Yeah, there's a big possibility that Super Bowl week in New Orleans has a lot of Saints head coaching discourse, whether it's the Lions or Joe Brady and the Bills. I don't know, Todd Monken and the Ravens. Like there's different coordinators out there. These coordinators of good teams become the top candidates. So it could stretch that far.
You don't want to throw Steve Spagnuolo out there?
I do not. Well,
I don't think Saints fans want to consider Steve Spagnuolo as head coach.
Anyway, it could also happen very quickly if Mike Vrabel comes in and blows you away, and then you do a couple of other interviews to satisfy, like Rooney Rule, and you interview Rizzi, but you've made your decision. Another name that was mentioned, Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated mentioned him in his column this morning, and I know, Jeff, you've talked about it in your crystal ball column. Like Mike McCarthy, if he gets let go by the Cowboys, has a past history with the Saints. Could he be a candidate?
Well, and he doesn't even have to be let go.
Right? Yeah, his contract's just up,
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen there. Is what it sounds like. That's why it's played out the way it has. And I know Mike McCarthy and Mickey Loomis definitely have a strong relationship, dating back to when Mike was here as OC. And that's the kind of guy I could see definitely being a fit with Mickey Loomis. We've already seen reports where it says, where they say that he wants to hire somebody he's familiar with that kind of fits with the way the Saints operate. So we'll see. That's one to definitely keep an eye on. But I think, just judging by how they handled the offensive coordinator job last year, I think it's going to – I don't know if this is going to be a quick – I may be wrong. I mean, maybe this will be different. But remember how methodical they were last year? Mm-hmm. It took a while. And just knowing Mickey Loomis, how he operates, I don't think he's going to be – I think in that line he always says we want to get the right coach, not the first – we want to make the right choice, not the first choice. So I think he's even though I think having the leeway now to get started on it, and people I have talked to said they have already done a lot of preliminary work and feeler calls, which you would expect to get lined up and ready to start the process next week. I still think it's going to take a little while.
Yeah, well, that process will start in earnest after Sunday's game. We do expect to hear from Mickey Loomis in his end-of-year press conference at some point next week. So we'll have more updates. I'm sure he'll be asked a ton about it and not say a whole lot of anything concrete. And to be fair, he may not know a whole lot of anything concrete by next week. There's, as you said, Jeff, this could be a long process. Some of the candidates they're interested in may not even be done playing for several weeks or even into the Super Bowl in February. So the process only begins. It's not going to end next week. Saints fans, Associated Grocers is hiring. If you're looking to join a team dedicated to supporting independent grocers, apply today. Your future starts here. We're going to take our second break, and we'll get into what to watch for in the Saints game in Tampa Hey, it's your last chance to watch the Saints for another, I guess, 7 months if you're going to count preseason, but longer than that for the real thing. So we will break it down. It's 1 of 17, and we're going to treat it like it's a real game, darn it, right after this break. Welcome back to the Saints Insider Podcast. All right, Saints play Tampa Bay. Kind of an abbreviated breakdown, but we still want to break it down. When the Saints have the ball, Spencer Rattler, we expect him to start. We expect Alvin Kamara to miss. Chris Olave has been practicing, but probably not going to play, guys. I mean, that's the feeling I think we all get.
I don't know. What do you think, Matt?
I would be shocked. I mean, I don't know how much we're allowed to say, but he doesn't seem to be taking the reps in practice that would indicate you're going to play.
I don't know though.
but
I think it's hard. It's to me though, like especially with the way they've kind of changed what we see in practice.
Yeah, but he still goes last in the rotation.
Yeah.
There's a lot being left unsaid here. I think the only way he plays is if the medical staff has completely cleared him and he goes to Darren Rizzi and says, I want to play. I'd like to get back out there one more time this season before the offseason. I'd like to take a hit and kind of get used to that feeling again. That's the only, and I don't know why he would have the motivation to do that, but that's really the only scenario in which they even consider it, I think.
I don't know. Like I say, like I've said before, like if the guy wants to play, he should play. You know, I don't think they should stand in the way if he's cleared, if everything's come back, like, okay, he's ready to be back in the field and he wants to be out there. Like, you should let him be out there, especially if he's one of your best players.
I was on that train, and I just think the way that they're handling it is going to – I think they're going to try and keep him out for his own good.
All right. But he's kind of the question mark. Carr looks like a no-go. Kamara almost certainly a no-go. We know Eric McCoy's a no-go. Lucas Patrick's a no-go. Marquez Valdez-Scantling looks like he's going to come back. And there is an interesting, I know a lot of the fantasy people track incentives at this time of year. He makes an extra $250,000 if he scores another touchdown. So, there's some incentive for him to be out there, and the Saints may try to do him a favor as well and feed him a few targets in the red zone if they get to the red zone.
Well,
he
just throw him deep. He's
ball.
also
He doesn't need to get to the red zone.
The Marquez Valdez-Scantling red zone is on your own 40-yard line. Yeah.
I mean, I remember that was one of the things that Jim Haslett was very aware of when he was head coach, was making sure those guys. He felt like as a head coach, he was a former player. That meant a lot to the players that your head coach did that for you. So,
you remember the Emmanuel Sanders?
Yeah, remember that? It was like fame. Yeah, so I could definitely
see feeding him catches to make sure he hit his.
Yeah, so I could see that. I mean, there's something to play for right there.
Right, there you go. MVS certainly does. What does Spencer Rattler have to play for? What do you guys want to see from Rattler? He's obviously been a roller coaster, but
just progress. Man.
Yeah, that's
progress.
It.
Just get better.
Well, progress, but it would help if he could end the year with a win. I mean, no one wants to go 0-6 in their starts.
Good
Try
point.
to be 0-6.
0-7.
And
it'd be 0-6. Yeah,
he'd be 0-6 and it starts like. What's the stat? They haven't had a rookie quarterback win
since 1981.
Unless you count Bobby Hebert, then it's 85.
Yeah, that's like he wasn't a true rookie.
Yeah, I mean, he played
much like
football.
Much like Aaron Brooks was technically like a rookie because he had never played in the NFL before he came here, and then
right. Was it Sam Mills who also not Sam Mills? Vaughn Johnson, another one of the USFL guys, comes in and it's like, yeah, he's not really a rookie.
Yeah, they played pro football for multiple years.
Yeah. I mean, for me, yes, you'd want to see him win a game, but like, I think the thing I'd want to see is like, can he play a clean game?
Right.
Can he play like a game where he looks good enough for 4 quarters? We've seen like he was excellent in the first half last week, despite the fact they only scored 10 points. He was outstanding. Yeah, I think his only incompletions were drops.
It was a drop and a throwaway.
That's what it was. So, like you've seen, I think I've seen enough good things out of him to feel confident in him as an NFL quarterback. I think starter is like still in question, but like now I want to see him. I want to see him put it together for a full game. I want to see him not have a careless turnover with football.
Yeah.
Like we saw 2 of them last week against the Raiders.
Right, and outside the Commanders game where he replaced Hainer in the second halves have really been his problem. You know, you think back to the first Tampa game, he looked really good, and that was his first start. I think part of that was the element of surprise, but once Tampa adjusted to those rollouts, they kind of shut him down, and he just hasn't really had that rhythm in the second half outside of the Commanders game, which was like his first half. So,
and I'd say this. I mean, I may be wrong. You all know definitely better the games he's played than I do, but it feels like he's never really had a good running game in any of his games either to help him. It feels like they can't get the running game going when Rattler's in there, partly because the offensive line's been hurt. But that's a huge factor. It feels like every game he's in, he's having to do a lot. And that's not the formula that they have. So if they could get the running game going against Tampa, albeit without, most of their good running backs.
Kamara or Kendra Miller.
Well,
Yeah.
so if Kendra Miller doesn't play, he's the other one I didn't mention. Missed practice the last 2 days with a concussion. We're recording before Friday's practice, as always. But which running back gets the most carries, you guys?
I bet it's Clyde.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I think Jamal Williams probably knows. The Saints probably know. Like he's probably not going to be on the team next year, right?
100%.
I mean, Clyde might. You get a look at Clyde. I think that's what they're going to do. I still think Jamal Williams is going to be part of the game plan. But like, what's his season high in carries this year? Like 5. And that's with Kendra Miller missing most of the year. It's with Alvin Kamara missing a couple games. It's probably. I mean, it might be more than that, but like he hasn't been. I think he got out carried last week by Clyde in that game, and Clyde had been with the team for 2 weeks. He's out carried the week before by Jordan Mims. So yeah, I think to me it'd be pretty clearly Clyde or maybe even Jordan Mims. It's like the leading number 1 running back.
And look, if you're Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you have a major incentive to play well. I mean, you're putting your career kind of on the line here. He's been released by the team that drafted him, picked up by his home state team. He has a chance to make an impression on the Saints management going forward to maybe stick on the roster for next year or for another team. But he's got a lot of motivation, I think. So I expect him to play well.
One of the reasons they haven't been able to have this running game is because they've fallen behind so early.
Yeah,
that
good point.
like the Packers game, you just completely get away from the run, and yeah, it's just they haven't really been in a good position to run the ball.
They could have last week, and they did. They just wasn't there. I mean,
Yeah.
As a side note, and maybe this is an off-season discussion, but that Jamal Williams signing, what a bitter disappointment for both sides. I mean, Jamal Williams led the NFL in touchdowns 2 years ago, and that he wasn't like a lead back in Detroit, but he was.
He ran for 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I mean, he was basically 1A in a timeshare, right? Like he was 1A or 1B in a timeshare, and he came down here, did nothing. The Saints got next to nothing out of him. Pretty big fail there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I looked at last year and I thought like, okay, like, Alvin Kamara averaged like 3.6 yards per carry last year, 3.9, something like that. He did not look good in that scheme behind that blocking unit last year. Kendra Miller, kind of the same deal. None of the running backs had a run of over 20 yards last year. So you're like, okay, well maybe it's just all that bad stuff kind of added up, and the running backs couldn't overcome that. But I think we've seen this rushing game look better this year, more explosive, and it still hasn't really resulted in much out of Jamal Williams. So I think that's probably just, I think they cut ties at some point in the next couple months.
Yeah. Okay. When the Bucs have the ball, they have been one of the NFL's most explosive offenses, especially in the second half of the season. Speaking of incentives, Mike Evans has a $3 million incentive if he gets 5 or more catches and 85 or more yards. I don't know what the lines are in his player props and stuff, but it seems like he's going to go way over that. He does that against the secondary when they're full strength, and he has no incentives.
That seems like an easy bet right there, Zachariah.
Well, what if the line's 125? He also has
Will the odds makers reflect that? That
Oh,
they
yeah.
know
Oh, yeah.
he's
They
got
know.
incentives?
They
That's
know.
interesting.
The other question is he has a streak of 1,000-yard seasons, and I don't know. He needs 100 and something yards.
I think it's less.
I think he needs
It's
85 yards.
Oh, maybe it's because maybe it's a 1,000-yard
He's at
season.
915.
Okay, that's what it is then. A 1,000-yard season triggers an incentive, and he needs 85 more yards for that. So
I'm willing to bet Clancy's dinner
Stop
for
it.
everybody here.
Stop, man.
but
How about you pay for our burns when we go?
No, I'm not going to go to
Oh,
Burns.
baby.
Clancy's, he's going to get 85 yards in this game.
Why would I bet? Why would it take that? That's
Yeah.
like
100%. Unless he gets hurt. Now I need an injury clause.
no,
An injury
no,
clause.
come on. That's the only way
like
he doesn't
trying to
get
get
it.
out of his
Injury
2
clause.
Clancy's dinners that he
Telling
owed
you.
us.
There's no doubt they're going to feed him.
Sunday, February 2nd, the Sunday before
They're going
the
to feed
Super
him
Bowl.
unlike they're feeding
I'll
us.
be in town. That's going to be Clancy's night. Let's mark on
All
the
right,
calendar.
let's bark it down.
February 2nd.
We're good.
All right. In all seriousness, test for a young secondary, Alontae Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry, whoever has to cover these guys. You're talking extreme test
Chris
here
Godwin.
with this offense.
Yeah, and to me, the thing that really stands out, and it stood out literally every time I've watched the Saints team against the Bucs with Baker Mayfield, is that, like, he is so slippery in the pocket. For a guy who's only maybe 6 foot 6'1", like 210 pounds, like he's hard to bring down, and those receivers being A, very good, and B, Mayfield's ability to just like extend plays and let him have more time to get open, like it's a bad combination against the Saints defense. So like that to me is what I'm really looking out for, is, and what I don't have a lot of confidence in is like the Saints pass rush actually getting Mayfield to the ground and him kind of slipping out of some potentially negative plays and turning him into big explosives. It's happened multiple times in their matchups in the past.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. Like, it's one thing Lamar Jackson or Jaden Daniels, but like Baker Mayfield's like Houdini back there. It's almost like he doesn't even know where he's going, and he just somehow manages to like bounce around like a pinball and find a lane. I've never seen a player quite like
He reminds me a little bit of prime Russell Wilson. He used to kind of do that where he'd turn his back to the play and then turn around and curl back and all of a sudden find himself in a spot where he could throw.
Yeah, look, I would say this. Y'all might disagree with me, but like, I want to see Kool-Aid McKinstry play a little better. I think he's not played that well recently. He's probably in a tough spot. People are coming after him. We know the Raiders went after Ugo Amadi last week and had a lot of success on him in the slot. But McKinstry needs to show a little progress here. I mean, this was a second-round pick. I want to see him play better. This will be a big challenge. I mean, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are, 2 of the best in the league. And if, like Luke said, if the rush can't get home and he extends these plays, I mean, it's going to be tough.
I can see Matt's phone. I know where his head's at. Go ahead, Matt.
You guys remember Sean Tucker?
I was just bringing that up. I was going to bring that up, yeah.
I'm going to trivia question on the spot. Do you think Sean Tucker's he had 136 yards. I think he's had more yards in the 10 games after
No.
the Saints.
No.
I'm going to say yes. I thought he had a big game in New York or somewhere.
It is technically yes, but he has 149 yards over the last 10 games. Yeah. He had 136. Oh, that's just rushing. I mean, if you throw in
scrimmage yards,
he
it was
probably
like
he has more
180.
scrimmage yards.
It does feel like a game. If the Bucs have this thing in hand in the second half, they're going to start to rest guys because they got to play a playoff game next week against Green Bay or Washington. So you could start to see guys like Sean Tucker come back in. And
Well, I mean, if I were them,
I
I'd
mean,
just
I would
play
just
Sean
play him.
Tucker. Yeah.
I mean, Bucky Irving's really good.
Bucky Irving is really good.
We got 3 good backs.
By the way,
Pretty solid backs
Mike
with
Evans' receiving yards total is 100.5. And to get 90 plus, you have to pay minus
Is that
175.
the first half alone? Or is that
He only had 30 yards the first meeting.
Yeah, well, just
Marshawn.
for those who don't follow betting and everything, that's a big jump between, hey, he's going to get 90 and then he's likely to get 100 because the most likely scenario probably is they get him over 90, the game's in hand, and then they can kind of shut it down because he needs 5 catches and 85 yards.
Yeah, look, I think the best chance the Saints had in this game was if somehow Tampa didn't have any motivation, but they're going to be motivated. But I would say they should have been motivated last year. The Saints went down there, and that was one of the more impressive wins they've had in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, they dominated the Bucs. From the opening kickoff, they dominated a team that needed a win. Now they ended up getting it the next week, but they obviously know this team really well. But it just feels differently this year, right?
That was a healthy Saints team, and the Saints still had technically something to play for.
Yeah, and look, you have to wonder, there's human nature here. I mean, the coaching staff's probably wondering what their futures are. Players, there's just so much uncertainty right now in the organization that wasn't really there last year. I think most people felt like it was a little more stable environment.
Except Pete Carmichael.
Yeah.
On that note, I don't want to get into it too much because we're starting to go long on a game that's kind of meaningless anyway. But read Matt's story about Clint Kubiak yesterday. It's at NOLA.com/Saints, and kind of he's in limbo too, because if the Saints were to bring in an offensive-minded coach, that's probably it for Clint Kubiak, and that would be his 4th year in a row going to an organization then leaving after just 1 year. So there's a chance a defensive-minded head coach would keep him around. I don't know. It's kind of an unfair evaluation of him this year too.
Yeah, he's had so many injuries to work with. I actually think that kind of bolsters his case to stick around, is that he's done a pretty good job given the circumstances. And I just think you have to, beyond the scheme, you have to kind of fit with the coach's culture and all that. Whoever they hire, they've got to be aligned philosophically there. But in terms of X's and O's, he's made a pretty convincing case. Like, if this was a normal season that had just gone off the rails, and let's say this was year 1 of a rebuild, he would not be in danger the way that Alex Van Patten is, and
Van Pelt.
Van Pelt. Sorry, and Van Pelt is in New England.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, keys to the game. You kind of mentioned this, Jeff, but really the question is how do the Saints stay in this thing long enough to even think about an upset in the second half? Because you mentioned this, if things go poorly from the beginning and it's 14-3 midway through the second quarter or worse, human nature is just, that's it. This is our season. Let's just go through the motions for 2.5 more quarters and call it a day. So how do the Saints stay in this thing and give themselves a chance at the end?
How many double passes can
I
they
was
throw?
just going to say, you're stealing me, man.
How many just trick plays do they have up their sleeve? I'd throw everything out there.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's the truth, though. Have some fun with it. It is what it is, right? Darren Rizzi, one thing I say about him, I like the way he's approached the games. He's letting it all hang out. He knows. And I think his players are still trying for him. I just think the circumstances are overwhelming the team right now. So go down there and what do you have to lose? Game 12? So go for it.
Yeah, they're just outgunned.
I'd put Hainer in. Let's see Hainer a little bit. Go in there. Throw a double pass.
Come on, man.
Oh, boy. How Ben DiNucci? Anybody?
No.
Luke, Jeff stole yours, so we'll come back. We'll give you a second to think.
I went first.
Matt, what have you got?
For the Saints' key to win this game?
Let's just stick with a key to stay in it.
Key to stay in it. You hope Tampa is the same Tampa team from last year that just completely didn't show up. I don't really know anyway other than that.
I think we give the Saints more credit for that Week 17 game last year. I thought that Saints played really well in that
They
game.
did. That's maybe the most confusing. The Buccaneers are the most confusing team in football to me. Are they good? Are they bad? I lean more toward good, but I think it's a blind spot. I like their roster. I like Baker Mayfield. But I don't know why this is coming down to Week 18 for them. They should have had this wrapped up.
They've had.
Well, they've had some injury problems of their
beaten
own.
some of the
though.
best teams in the league.
Everybody has injury. See, I'm like the opposite of you. I don't like their roster. I don't like Baker Mayfield. I think they're going to be bad. And then they go out and they beat the Lions and they beat the good
Chargers,
teams.
beat
And then
the
they
Eagles.
go
Drubbed the
out and
Chargers.
they throw a complete stinker out there. I'm like, that's the team I thought they were going to be. They are 100% capable of coming out here with everything on the line and looking like absolute crap. That is 100% a possibility this
It's
week.
absolutely true, yeah.
So we all think the Saints are going to get just brained in this game because Tampa is absolutely capable of beating literally anybody in the NFL, and they are also capable of just going out there and looking like one of the worst teams in football. because like there's such a high degree of variance with this team. They've got all these guys who are like have been really good players for a long. They have an old roster too. Like got Levante David out there. Mike Evans is in his 30s. You don't see very many receivers in their 30s play well in the NFL. He's like an anomaly. Baker Mayfield's on his fourth team. Like
They're what the Saints want to be.
This is a team that beat Detroit, beat Philadelphia, although that was a very injured Philadelphia team at the time. Took Kansas City to overtime.
Beat the Chargers.
Beat the Chargers, but also, lost to Dallas, was swept by Atlanta, gave up 27 points in one quarter to the New Orleans Saints, by the way.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Like,
to Luke's point, if the Bucs come out and play 4 quarters like they played the second quarter here, anything's possible. Because Baker Mayfield's got some Jameis in him. I mean, he'll throw the ball into the tight windows and balls ricochet around. He gets a lot of balls bad at the line. I mean, things can go south quickly on him. We saw it in that second quarter. They were in hand, and all of a sudden the Saints had 4 touchdowns or something like that. Yeah. So it can happen with this team.
All right. Let's do our predictions. Let's say what we think. You can leave yours in the comments below. We also ask you, while you're down there, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the like button, and share with your friends. All right, Rod Walker is not here. He has Saints. Excuse me.
Wow,
that was a false start. He has
Rod is really just rolling the dice on this. Like
Rod is like, I've got my first spot.
Rod's
14-2 on predictions this year. He did not
clinch the first round bye, and he's like, whatever. I'm gonna throw Carson Wentz out there.
He took the Bucs 31 and the Saints 10. He very much did not pick the Saints.
Rod's still trying to win in week 18. Good for him.
He's trying to go for 15-2 in a record.
He had the kneel down touchdown.
Matt?
I have the Bucs 27-7. I don't think this game will be close, and I don't think New Orleans offense. I don't know. It just stalls, and
we've all seen it.
Yeah, we've all seen it.
We've all seen it. I actually do think it's going to be close, and I'm even to the point where if I was one game behind Rod, because I'm in second, I'm 11-5 this year. If I was one game behind Rod, I'd throw caution in the wind and pick the Saints in this game. I think they keep it close just because that's the way the NFL works. And by the way, the line of this game is 14. If it had been played last week, it would have been 8.5. So you're telling me the Saints' performance against the Raiders is worth almost a touchdown on the spread? I don't think so. I'm going to pick Tampa Bay by 8, 28-20. They kind of put a scare into them. Don't find a way to win, but Bucs win at 28-20.
Yeah, that was my logic going into Green Bay. Look how well that served me.
Has to happen sometime, right?
I picked the Bucs 35-17. Yeah, like I just said 5 minutes ago, I think the Bucs are absolutely capable of losing this game. It wouldn't surprise me if they made the Super Bowl. It wouldn't surprise me if they get just like absolutely torched in the first round of the playoffs. But like I don't think there's anything that we've seen the last couple of weeks with the Saints team, both in the Green Bay and Las Vegas losses, and in who we've seen potentially coming back and probably missing this game, that really gives me any confidence in picking the Saints to keep it close. I think I'll take the even with a huge spread. I think the Buccaneers cover it.
All right. And finally, Jeff Duncan,
How
who
am I
has
doing
picked
in
the
the picks?
Saints
How am I doing in
in
picks?
all of these weeks. He has stayed loyal to picking the Saints. You're going to end the year going completely the opposite direction.
Hey, new year, new Jeff, you know?
I mean, they lost, as Matt said, but 2 touchdowns to the Raiders. The Raiders are one of the worst teams in the league.
Who had been in town for like 10
At home.
hours when that was
like got in at 1 a.m. or something. They're going to get torched in this game. Absolutely no doubt in my mind. And if they don't, I'll buy you all dinner at Clancy's.
That's going to happen anyway.
Just stop
That's going to
doing
happen anyway, man.
You need to buy us odd dinner at Clancy's before you keep making these.
I went to
proclamations about it.
Absolutely no way they are even competitive in this game.
And you have 33-9, I believe.
even for non-paying bets purposes, Jeff has been like, "Gotta take you to Clancy's. Gotta take you to Clancy's." I've worked at the Times-Picayune a year and a half, and I went to Clancy's with my girlfriend the other day because you had never invited us yet. So
I've never been to
We're going to
Clancy's.
make it happen. It's hard
There
to
you
get
go.
everybody together, man.
February
I've been
2nd.
trying.
That's
been
the
trying
date.
for a year and a half.
right.
Maybe we shouldn't say people.
Now we know how hard Jeff tries.
Right.
I'm just saying it's going to be ugly. I wouldn't watch this game. If you're
I
a
thought you were
Saints
talking
fan.
about Clancy's for a second there.
No,
It's going to be ugly too.
that will be ugly on me probably.
Okay, Saints and Bucs to finish the season. We will have a post-game show for you, a post-season show for you Sunday afternoon. So, look, it's probably going to be pretty forward-spinning. We're going to discuss what's going to happen next for this franchise, and that's what we will discuss for the next several weeks. So we thank you all for joining us and hanging out with us. We'll have another regular podcast for you on Wednesday. For our producer, Norman Bell, he's Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan. I'm Zach Ewing. Stay strong, New Orleans, and we will see you next time.